Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do the program every Tuesday through Friday here on LinkedIn and a bunch of other platforms, actually Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and others. The point of the show is to have today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, CEOs, people who are doing amazing work, who can help that we can actually learn from so that we can get better at what we do. Now, the program can be interactive. The only way that happens, though, is if you ask your questions, and we'd love to have your questions today for Kevin Hancock and myself. We're happy to answer those questions as best we can. So please do send your messages online. We encourage it, and we'll monitor all of our social feeds here to get those questions. Now, if you like or love the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit as well, and we can grow. That's another side benefit that I'd appreciate. Thank you very much. Today, I've got Kevin Hancock. Kevin is the author of The Seventh Power, One CEO's Journey into the Business of Shared Leadership. He's the CEO of Hancock Lumber, one of the oldest and best-known family businesses in the United States. He is the recipient of the Ed Muskie Access to Justice Award, the Habitat for Humanity Spirit of Humanity Award, and his first book, Not for Sale, Finding Center in the Land of Crazy Horse, was the recipient of the National Indie Excellence Award and Independent Author Network Book of the Year. Kevin is the author of The Seventh Power. We're going to talk about that today. That's his newest book. And Kevin, welcome to the program.
Rhett, hello. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we are in strange times, and I'm sure I'm sort of fascinated. How are you handling the pandemic with your company, and how has it affected your company, Hancock Lumber?
Yeah, well, of course, first big thing is that nobody really saw this coming. And when you think about the world we live in today, that's a possibility that we have to keep factoring in to our strategic thinking. So this was obviously an incredible, unprecedented disruption. Now, our business up here in Maine is one that we can't do remotely. So we make lumber, and you can't do that from your couch in your sweatpants. So our business has been designated essential, and our customers are still going. So we're still working, and we had to figure out essentially how to create distance in all of our workstations and really put a priority on cleanliness and safety and individual health. But so far, so good. Our teams have really settled in, and they've got a very strong appetite for wanting to work through this. So it's actually been a bit inspiring, honestly, to watch how our people have responded.
That's amazing. Now, when you were thinking about, because I think this is not only what you just said, interesting from the fact that you're still able to work, but I think it's also important from when things start to open back up again, having a plan, because I think we're still going to have to maintain distance from one another. We're going to still have to focus on cleanliness. Is that something that that your management team came up with, or was this sort of a collective decision on how to make all of this work? Because I'm sure you had to like reshuffle things and rethink, cleaning and distance and workstations and that sort of thing. I mean, was that sort of a collective, everybody puts their mind together, kind of how you did it?
Yes, I love that question, because I, think about who has to lead in order to defeat this virus. And the answer, of course, is everybody, whether it's in a community, a country, or a company. So we started right at the employee level. It said, of course, if you're sick, stay home. If you have people you have to care for, stay home. Or if you're uncomfortable, stay home. So only come to work if you're feeling good physically and mentally. Then at work, everybody participated in designing the new best practices around how to get every job function done while still distancing and cleaning at every point along the way. So it has very much been collaborative. We have 530 employees and we have 530 leaders when it comes to COVID-19 management.
That seems like a really good way to think about it when the economy opens back up. And those are conversations that seems to me should be happening now, right? For a lot of businesses, they can work remotely to some extent. Not everybody, maybe, but the office staff and the administrative staff and all of that. It seems to me that's a great way to think about it, about returning back to work for a lot of businesses. How would you do that if you were CEO of a different type of company where you had 500 people in offices or on a location site? How would you bring them back?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. Again, we had a bit of an advantage in picturing this because we never left. So we really have seen that it is possible to work and prioritize health, which to your point, Rhett, is what's coming next. We're going to need to open this economy, but we're going to need to continue to be very vigilant when it comes to health. So I think the message to me for a company that's been working remotely might be to take a look at the companies that haven't been working remotely, see what they've been doing, because there are lots of examples of this working, companies that are working in person through this, right. And then create systems that engage everybody in developing the back to work processes and priorities for making it go smoothly. Because really, at the end of the day, it takes every individual, and every individual's got to be comfortable and feel safe and has got to be a leader in contributing to the healthy conditions for others around us.
I agree. And I think that's interesting because I don't think until we have a vaccine or people feel like there are therapeutics that really can knock this thing out. I think a lot of people are not going to feel terribly comfortable, right? For example, I've got a son with asthma, right? And so I know that until we can come up with a vaccine and we can go down to CVS and get our shot, once a year, like you get the flu shot, right? I want to be vigilant and say, okay, I need to take extra care even when we go out to make sure that he's safe. And so I think that there are a lot of people that are going to be facing that question in the back of your mind. Am I doing everything I can? And I think a lot of businesses are going to have to address it when the economy comes back up. I just think thank you for your advice on that, because I think workers are going to be really concerned about that. I think those are going to be major questions for leadership in the next couple of weeks, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think it may help. I had thought about this until it came up here in our talk, Rhett, but it may help others to really remember that there actually are millions of Americans going to work today. There are millions who aren't, but there are millions who are, and they've been able to do this safely. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already been a learning curve out there that other businesses can leverage and take some insight and some confidence from.
Yeah, and share and share best practices on how they've done it. Yeah. So I want to ask you, you were diagnosed in 2012 with spasmodic dysphonia. Is that how it was called?
Yes, they call it SD for short, but you said it right. Yes, SD.
which made communicating and speaking hard and difficult. But it also, you talk about how that transformed you as a leader and how it made you think differently about leadership. Can you explain that and talk about that? Because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, ironically, this goes back to the last economic crisis. It was actually 2010 at the peak of the housing and mortgage market collapse, which was super challenging for our industry. We're a lumber company, and our products go into construction. At the peak of that collapse, I began to have trouble speaking, something I'd always done a lot of and totally taken for granted. And as a CEO, really, your voice is kind of your primary tool.
Right.
You're a communicator, and that's how you communicate it. Suddenly I couldn't do it. But long story short, initially when I was diagnosed, before I was diagnosed and having a lot of trouble speaking, sorry about that, before I was diagnosed and having a lot of trouble speaking, I started answering questions with a question, long story short. So someone would come to me at work with a question or a problem, and I started simply saying, well, that is a good question. What do you think we should do about it? And this initially was not a leadership move. It was just to protect my voice and put the conversation back on the other person. But what struck me over time and got me really intrigued about a new approach to leadership was that people already knew what to do. They didn't actually need very often a top-down directed solution to the questions and the problems they face. They knew what to do. All they really needed was some confidence and a safe work culture to trust their judgment and follow their own voice. And so that led me to thinking very differently about what leadership, how leadership might be done in a way that actually dispersed power and strengthened the voices of others and created a culture where everybody led.
What does that look like practically?
Yeah, it looks lovely, is what it looks like practically. It looks very agile and smooth and collaborative and efficient and powerful. You know, in this world today that's moving so quickly, that old model of bring everything to the castle, bring everything to the headquarters for guidance or action is really no longer possible, say nothing about optimal. So when you have a set of shared values that define who you are and a clear mission that kind of defines what you want to do, at that point, less is more, and really letting everybody do their jobs and trust their instincts and lead is a really beautiful, powerful thing to be a part of.
What is so? Do you make your organization flatter? Do you have less management, so to speak? I mean, how do you do it from a sort of productivity and KPR kind of way of thinking as a CEO? How do you implement it? I guess would be the question.
Yeah, good question. What we've really focused on is creating a kind of a new set of communication systems designed to give voice to the employees of the company. Okay. So it's really making time to listen and listening for understanding, not judgment, and allowing employees to participate in talking about the biggest issues and opportunities that face them. Now, at the end of the day, that still turns into policy and systems and
Right.
goals and best practices. But what we found is if we slow down a bit to include everybody in the creation of those things, that A, will make better decisions because we
Hmm.
got better input, and B, those decisions will be supported more sincerely and resolutely. People are more likely to support that which they help to create. So, one of the things I've really tried to emphasize, and I'm glad it came up, is that in our experience, this approach of giving everybody a voice actually creates more discipline, not
Okay.
less, because everyone, again, was able to participate in the processes of kind of defining who we are and what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Our productivity and efficiency and key metrics have all improved pretty dramatically in the years in which we've been working to share leadership and give everybody a voice and put structure around that. Not to run on this, but what I've really found in hindsight is it's actually a lot more complicated to create systems that don't give people a voice. That's actually difficult. And historically, leadership has done that, but it's taken all kinds of layers and bureaucracy and structure to control it. Because really, who doesn't want to be able to say what they think? Who doesn't want to be able to help lead? To create a structure that doesn't do that, it requires a lot more work than to create a structure that includes everybody.
I love your tagline where you said customers aren't going to love the company until the employees do. And I absolutely love that, because what you've done here to me is you've given everybody ownership in a sense, right? And when you have ownership of something, you're going to treat it like your own. You're going to treat it so much better, that makes that's so intuitive to me. It makes sense to me. So I applaud you for that, because I think that's unique, and you're absolutely right. When you think about it, I've never thought about it in that way, but when you said it's more complex to create these layers and these you're absolutely right. It takes so much more energy, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It's a lot easier to deconstruct it and do something that's more inclusive. To the point you were talking about, I've the phrase I've coined that we've focused on is the creation of an employee centric company, where the first focus of the company is the employees themselves, to make sure that they're having a highly positive, meaningful experience. And the belief was, well, twofold. First, that should be done because these employees are human beings. So the first reason to do it is not for the company. It will help the company, but the first reason is these are human beings spending a large percentage of their time and energy at work. And that should be more than just an economic exercise for them. But second, this will also improve corporate performance. When you think about flywheel, with all the constituents from employees to customers to vendors to community to industry, how complicated it can be to manage all of that.
Mm-hmm.
We found a lot of clarity in the simplicity of saying, let's put all our energy into setting that flywheel in motion at the employee experience. That's something we can focus on. And let's believe that if they're having a great experience, they will figure out how to make sure the customer has a world-class experience, and they will make sure their company produces a world-class performance. So that was the approach. That was the theory. It actually increased focus and allowed us to simplify how the entire company would be successful by focusing on one point in the experience initially, which was the employee experience.
No, I think that's great. I love it in the sense I like it in a lot of ways, but for me, it's where the focus should start. You often hear we're customer centric, and I think that skips a step, right? Because if you're employee centric and you focus on the employee, I mean, it's natural that they take care of the customer. So I totally get that. Do you think it's made, I guess, a two-part question. Do you think it's made you more innovative as a company? And number two, do you think it helps I remember when in my first company, we started and we got hit by the recession really hard. So what we did is we ended up sharing financials and where we were with everybody in the company. And what I saw was this sort of transformation of people turning out the lights when we left, taking the garbage out so that, little things started to get done that ultimately saved money. And the delivery people were staying in cheaper hotels voluntarily. They started taking care of the company. Do you see your employees taking care of the company in that way? Have you seen sort of drastic changes in cost? And do you think it's made the company more innovative?
Yes, it has definitely made us more innovative, and the answer is kind of obvious, right? If you could get the honest, best perspectives from everybody in the company, and if you could create a culture where everybody felt like they led, the creativity and the re-engineering and the change just starts to become something that as a CEO, you can't keep up with. So now I go out in the field and I'm learning about all the change after it's happened, and it's all consistent with our values and priorities. But I also want to tell you a funny quick story about the customer coming first, as you mentioned too. When I really got into this idea, I stood up in front of a room of our biggest customers 5 or 6 years ago and took a deep breath and said, that old saying, the customer comes first, I don't actually believe that's true anymore. I remember I was sweating when I said
that. Was brave, man. That was brave.
I went on to say, though, to your point, that I think it misses a step, that the people who are going to take care of the customer should come first. And if the company does that in a world-class way, that will ensure the employee experience. So now, the customer experience, rather. So now what I like to say, to use a piece of Maine slang, is the customer comes a wicked close second. Do you know that? Do you know that?
I haven't heard it, but I get it.
Wicked? Yeah. Up here in Maine, wicked means good. You throw that right in as a substitute for good. So we're still really, really into our customers. They're a top priority for us, but they don't come technically first. They come a wicked close second.
That's okay. I think that's acceptable. I like it. We've got a couple comments, I think. So Lori Lever, thank you for joining us. Karen, thank you. Douglas Lewis. He says he'll be looking for your books. Karen says, when we are excited about anything, it shows, and our excitement and positivity is infectious. Great point, Kevin. Lori asked, it's very interesting to hear how business continues in Maine. However, I have to go. I'll catch it. Okay. Well, thank you guys for commenting. And hey, Impo, thank you for joining us. Impo says, being an employee centric company and outwardly communicating that you are ultimately wins customers over. People love companies that take care of people, especially their own people. It makes their brand human and compassionate in people's minds. And that emotional connection is the best route to long-term customer loyalty. Couldn't agree more, Impo. What do you think about that, Kevin?
Yeah, totally agree. Just right.
Yeah, I think Impo's right. So, what any thoughts on, as I want to sort of pivot back to small business now and this pandemic and what's happening, and any advice on, I mean, a lot of companies are in survival mode right now. You've been there. You've been through tough times economically. Your family's business is over 100 and something years old. Any thoughts, any wisdom, anything to share about how to take care of yourself as a CEO, how to get through this? Any thoughts on that? Any advice?
Yeah, I think recognizing that it's difficult and that we don't have all the answers is important. I think right now that authenticity is super important in terms of leadership and really taking a holistic look at this challenge. And again, for us, because of our focus, it really starts with the physical and emotional well-being of our employees, and recognizing that they've got real challenges outside of work first in their lives right now, with schools being closed, daycare closed, other family members maybe not working, someone not feeling well. So you got to really start with that, because until people are able to take care, it's like that hierarchy of needs, right? You've got to make space for people to take care of their core needs first. And then at the company, I just think it's super important to communicate, and to do so authentically and transparently. We've tried to share everything we know about where we're at and what we're doing, so that none of the people on our team have to wonder or guess. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback about the importance of consistent, transparent communication right now.
So I want to ask you this question about the seventh power and change management. This process, when you started really working on this, probably took some time for people to get used to, and for it to evolve into what it is now. This sort of where we are today seems to me a really good opportunity, that if you want to make changes in your business, you want to make changes in the way you manage, if you want to make changes in your systems and processes, this is a great time to do it. Is that, would you agree with that, or is this something, or do you think it's not a time to really blow up your whole model and rethink?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think probably from a communication standpoint, if one felt like they hadn't traditionally been super authentic or transparent or focused on listening for understanding, that this would be a great time to work on those pieces. In terms of like larger corporate restructuring of an approach, I think it's probably not the best time, because you're trying to just kind of keep the ship steady and live in the current moment. But I think the most important seeds of big change, which again is how I think leaders interact with their people, that is something that should be a focus right now, and could be a basis for change for any leader that wanted to to make it. Because I do think that, that when it comes to leadership transformation, it starts with ourselves, that we've got to not look at what other people need to do differently. We've got to really look at what we might do differently. It's that iconic thought from Gandhi of becoming the change you wish to see in the world. You know, I can look at any challenge or weakness in our company and I can trace it every time back to me, not as the sole creator of the weakness, but as a contributor, that I can think about what I did or did not do that enabled that weakness in our organization. And I know my life as a leader got a lot simpler when I started focusing more on what I needed to do and less on what others need to do. I really think that leadership change happens from within. So I guess coming full circle to your good question, I think thinking about it that way, yeah, that change can start today. All of us can evolve as leaders today, and that change will set the stage for corporate transformation down the road.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I was thinking about it. Somebody asked me that yesterday, and that's why I wanted to ask you, because I think it's an interesting question, and I think it's maybe business by business, but at the same time, maybe it's like you said, focusing on yourself first, right, and not trying this wholesale. There's enough change going on, right? There's enough upheaval and uncertainty and things right now as it is. But maybe working on that personal transformation, and that being a really good place to start, because I think this is in a lot of ways, a make or break time for leadership, isn't it? Because you either gain a lot of credibility with your team or you blow it, I think.
Yeah, I think I might put it this way. I think the culture of an organization really reveals itself in a time of difficulty. And that culture, that base is either going to really help you through a difficult time or expose its flaws and weaknesses at a time like this.
Yeah, I think that's so true. So where can people get The Seventh Power? Is that, I'm sure, on Amazon and everywhere else? Can't get it in a bookstore,
exactly.
I guess, right now.
No, right. So it's available everywhere books are sold, which today is really online. So at Amazon or barnesandnoble.com or on my own website, which is KevinDHancock.com. And that's also a place where people can communicate with me directly. And I always make the time to connect with people that want to connect with me.
Well, we'll put the link to the website, to your website, on the feed, and so people can get to it directly. They don't have to go search for it.
Great.
Kevin, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I think the work you do is very important. So thanks for helping to share my voice today with others. I appreciate that.
Well, I'd love to have you back on as a panelist in another conversation. We're going to continue just talking every day and helping other people get through this and get on the other side of this. And thank you for spending some time with us today, whether it was lunchtime or whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And I appreciate your time. We'll be back tomorrow with another program. And until then, you can find the schedule on powerlunch.live, the website. We've got podcast on there. We've got the video. We've got everything on there. And we've got the upcoming schedule as well. So check the website out. And again, thank you for your time, and enjoy your loved ones. Enjoy spending some close quarter time with them, and have a great day.